Welcome to the Scottish Watches podcast. We've got a collector conversation. Now, this is something we used to do back in the day, and then we kind of gave it a bit of a breather. And then it came back. We had Chloe, we had Rick Remiker, and now we've got a third person, the sort of the end of the trio, the treble, the triple bill, the hat trick. And this is a gentleman that I met in a different continent. We've actually met in multiple continents across the planet, never on home turf, neither in his home or my home turf. But it's my pleasure to welcome to Scottish Watches podcast, eventually, after many, many months, Tim from the States, a collector and enthusiast, and someone that does a lot of moving and shaking behind the scenes. But that's not what he's here to talk about today. He's here to talk about watch collecting, the journey, what it starts with, what it ends with, and that big long middle part that we all enjoy. And before we hit record, he actually showed me the most inexpensive watch I think I've ever seen, and one of the most expensive watches I think I've ever seen. So it's going to be a massive cavalcade of Aladdin's treasures from start to finish. And welcome to the show, Tim. How are you doing?
I'm awesome, man. Thank you for having me, Ricky. Excited to be here. Back home in Philadelphia, at least temporarily. So we'll see how long that lasts.
It's a tricky one because trying to pin you down is as difficult sometimes as trying to pin down Dave or these other folks. They're in Switzerland one week, Dubai the next, over in the States the following, and to actually catch them when they've got a chance to breathe in between events and launches and things. It's a tricky thing to do, but we're going to give this a good shot today, and we're also going to tell everybody to stay ahead of the game. Check the show notes, that's where all the pictures, the links, the technical spec, anything we talk about in this episode of the podcast will end up in there, thanks to Miziel. And there'll be a lot of watches that we're going to talk about that you'll want to look at afterwards. Perhaps you're driving, you're at the gym, you're walking the dog, and before this hits YouTube, you will definitely want to see these timepieces. So let's crack on with things, and the first thing we like to do when I remember is the wrist check. So have you got something fancy on the wrist today to show us?
I always have something fancy on the wrist. So yeah, let's pull it in. This is the Asteroid. Yeah, this is sexy. This is sex on hands. So this is my piece unique from Moser. I designed this with them. It was a 2-year collaboration from conception to getting it on the wrist. And I've had it like 16 months now, a little over a year. So it gets its daily wear. It's a monster piece. It is stainless steel, but it's a meteorite dial. It is black diamond indices. It is half black diamonds, half regular diamonds on the bezel, which rotates, as you can see, so you can make it crazy. Flying tourbillon, leaf hands, and a little surprise inside, but I can't really let all the surprises out on the watch. Little secret.
This is not a stranger to Scottish Watches. This is a watch that our viewers and listeners have seen before, because I managed to steal it off your wrist over in Dubai, and I got to place it in the glorious sunshine and got some amazing pictures of it, along with a very nice timepiece that was accompanying you on your wife's wrist. But that one there is fantastic. Do you want to give us a quick run through what the process is like to work with an independent like Moser to create a custom watch?
Yeah, so working with an independent's obviously different than working with a large company, but again, every independent's going to be different. Moser is hands-on. They're watch fanatics. They know what they're doing, but they are also no bullshit, no pressure. So a lot of people are like cookie cutter, take this, take from that. It was literally, hey, what do you want to make? And like, let's see how far we can push this. And I got thoroughly drunk with Claudio, who wrote on I believe it was literally a bar napkin. He took notes. And then 3 months later, he showed up in Philadelphia with a poster of what I had drunkenly concocted with him. And I thought he was joking when he was like, do you want it? And I was like, yeah, sure. And he was like, oh, we'll make it. I was like, what do you mean make it? I was like, you made it. And he was like, no, the watch. I was so confused. I thought he was just offering me the poster. And then I said, yeah, dude, I'll take the watch. So after some negotiation, we went back and forth, and then the build time they estimated would be between 1 year and 18 months. And they came in a little under a year, but it was a big process. And I don't think Edward was as happy, because I think they lost money making this watch. I don't think they do it again. And I'm very happy. It was good for me. I got to go meet the watchmaker that made it in Switzerland, in Schaffhausen. I got to do the factory tour, the museum tour. It's been an amazing process. And since then, a million other Moser events. I've gotten very close with the whole team, but it all started with Claudio. So I got to give him a big shout out.
He is a gentleman that I'm well aware of, because when I first got into watch collecting, it was Tim Moser, Watchbox. I think it was called What You Want back in the day. And it progressed into Watchbox and then Goldberg and then where it is today with the different companies that are behind the scenes. And Claudio was one of the on-screen talents. He was obviously involved behind the scenes working for the company. But the good thing about Watchbox is they take those sales reps, those engineers, even Mike Michaels back in the day, the watchmaker extraordinaire, they would take them and put them on screen so you could learn from the guys that actually did it, the touch and the feel, working behind the scenes, working with the brands and working with the movements. I actually met up with him in Geneva about a month ago. We had a Moser dinner. Me and Dave went along. We're working with Ed on something. It's not a watch, definitely not a watch. It's a show, but we can't say more than that because it's going to be something pretty special when it comes to be. But Claudio, great guy, love him to pieces, and he's a great brand ambassador because he lives and breathes Moser watches. We definitely found that when we watched him recently in a Roman Sharp video on YouTube that'll be linked in the show notes. So yeah, fantastic stuff. And I know what you mean about working with the guys at Moser because the meme liner, the watch I got last December, that was 4 years in the making, although we did kind of forget about it for a couple of years in between times. But when you actually get the watch on wrist, all that pales into insignificance. The feeling you get is just, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing. And Claudio has the Philadelphia connection. He used to be the manager at Godberg, which is literally a block away from me, their flagship headquarters store of 1916. So, I go there every chance I can get. But obviously, he comes back to Philly all the time. So it was very cool. And we hit it off fast. He's an East Coast guy. I'm an East Coast guy. Talk fast, and move quickly. So it worked well. We fit well.
That's the way to be. And I hear that perhaps it's not just what's on the wrist, but maybe what's on the desk as well today.
So there's a bunch of things on the desk, not too many, but we're going to do a little unboxing here. I got a delivery today from Christopher Ward. I took it out of the DHL. I haven't looked at the watch yet. I hope it's there. I hope everything's good, but it's a Bel Canto. It is a limited edition called the Phoenix. It has been in part with a car collector group, specifically a guy named Jazz, a maniac from Great Britain, who has a McLaren, and it's based off the color of his one-of-one McLaren. So I believe they made 99 of them. It's called the Phoenix, Bel Canto. Let's open it up, see if it's there. So this, I think, is an extra strap. We'll do that first. It came separate. It is. So this is like a leather orange strap for the Phoenix. It's titanium, the Phoenix, so I believe the buckle's titanium as well. And then here's our cool Christopher Ward box, which I'm sure people are familiar with. There's the Phoenix Limited. Let's just pop it open, see how this goes on live camera.
Let's hope you open it the right way around so it doesn't fall out the bottom.
I didn't look. I already got a piece stuck right now. So there you go. True lot unboxing. All right. So we got, I don't know what this is. Oh, it's a full watch cloth carrier bag. And then we have your QR code serial. Good piece there. Owner's manual, which for some reason is ridiculously thick. Yep, it's a big owner's manual. There's a watch in here. Let me take the plastic off. All right, so this is the Phoenix. Orange Bel Canto, titanium. Oh, did you know that ding?
It dinged.
It just dinged.
Live on camera.
I didn't put that up. I swear to God, I didn't do that. All right, that's pretty cool. It's obviously not midnight, so it's set for midnight. I don't know. That just happened on camera. So it's very cool. I'm a big Christopher Ward fan. I think they're probably the best bag in the world for the buck. I think what they're doing is insane. I'm not sure how they're making money, but that's not my problem. I'm just going to keep buying their watches. There's your cool Phoenix emblem on the back, dragon. But I love it. I think they're absolutely amazing and a very, very cool watch. Very excited to have it. Took a year, full year, but it's here now. And now I'm covered in boxes.
An orange Bel Canto. I don't think I can envisage anything quite as unique as that. I've seen different colours, I've seen the limited, I've seen the one they did for Watchmakers Day. That one stands out. That one actually really does hit the mark. And the most recent watch I've seen that's a very similar colour would be the Matt Farah Smoking Tire Edition with Nodus. Before we do my wrist check, I want you to tell a story about a certain watch that has become infamous. There's famous and there's infamous. And this watch, it blew the socks off journalists, watchmakers of incredible stature, including the likes of Philippe Dufour, amongst others. So tell us the story of this crazy, crazy watch.
The crazy watch. So this watch, unfortunately, it's not on my person. It's not actually mine, even though a lot of people think it is. It's Rob's, Rob Huberty. So he went online and he bought an Invicta and he Googled basically ugliest watch in the world. So he got this Invicta, which is a heaping monster. It is literally 0.96 pounds. So it's a pound. The watch weighs a pound. I believe it's 56 or 58 millimeters across. It's enormous. It's adorned with gold chains. It is a hideous purple and green and yellow. I'm sure you have a million pictures, but he got this goofy watch and he decided we were going to get it on as many people's wrists as possible. So we were going to just put it on people's wrists. We were going to take pictures. We were going to share the insanity of this crazy horological hobby. And we started in the States and we started getting on people's wrists. And then we were both headed to Watches and Wonders. So we said, all right, we're going to go up to people that have no business putting this on. We're going to get it on everybody. Now, we succeeded past our wildest expectations. I mean, I tell people and people think we're bullshitting, but we got it on. Let's just start with the Big Daddy, Philippe Dufour. So Rob and I were there. We were at an event in Switzerland, and he was there. He was with his family, and he was leaving. And I told Rob, I was like, "Got to make your move." He was like, "Dude, he's with his family." I'm like, "If not now, never. Like, let's go. Act like you were a Navy SEAL," which he really was. So we cornered Philippe Dufour, and immediately he asked Rob. He goes, "Did you make?" And Rob was like, "No." So he's like, "It's wonderful," and he just started reviewing it. He told his daughter, Danielle, he was like, "Hold my stuff." And then he asked us, he goes, "Do you want to see my watch? Can I compare my watch?" So we laughed and he was like, "No, can I go?" Of course. So he went in his pocket and I filmed this on my cell phone. You have the video. He took out a watch that I don't think anybody's ever seen. It's the Simplicity 000. So it's the first Simplicity he ever made. And we asked him, we go, "Well," he goes, "This is mine." He goes, "I don't show this to anyone." So we did a whole review. We took pictures with it. And then we got that thing on. Obviously, you and Dave did a beautiful tasteful spread with it. Very classy at the UN boutique. I love that a lot. Very, very classy. And then it was on Ludwig Ocean, who did The Freak. It was on Andrew. It was on Adrian. It was on every YouTube celebrity. And then it has been on Watchmakers. It was on Patrick Prino. It was on Matthew Haberlin, Edward, Bertrand, the Moser crew, and then so on and so on. And then Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank. Great guy. I met him in Switzerland. We put it on him in Switzerland. And then 2 weeks later, I saw him at the Formula One race in Miami. So I made him wear it while he was in Miami. So it was great. It's a good time. So that hideous beast, it's been on too many people to mention. That's just a few.
Yeah, it was a bit of a talking point. It was the star attraction of Watches and Wonders this year. And it goes to show that people aren't as stuffy in Switzerland as perhaps are made out, because everybody get in on the joke. Everybody had fun with it. Although we nearly did get kicked out of that UN boutique because apparently there was a deal being done up in the top level in the VIP area with a client, and there's me unzipping my trousers in front of Dave. And if you want to find out more and hear more about it, check the show notes. That's where all the pictures will appear. But in your honour, and in Rob's honour, and in honour of the watch that you're talking about, today my wrist check is going to be right up your street because
Oh, yeah.
I have got the Captain America Marvel Invicta on, and this only comes out once a year, usually on the 4th of July, Treason Day, as us Brits like to call it. But yeah, this is in your honour. I'm wearing this. It's a stunning piece. Seiko NH35 inside. It's got a semi-translucent dial, PVD coated blue, with a form-fitting rubber white strap. Not quite as fetching as your wrist check, but hey, I've got to do something to put a smile on your face.
Here's the deal though, Ricky. That Invicta compared to the other Invicta is like comparing a Honda to a Ferrari. Like yours looks beautiful compared to the other Invicta, or it looks hideous. I can't decide. I don't know which one it is. It's either beautiful or hideous. That looks like a watch. The one we have looks like something from the planet Krypton. Like it's a block. It's more like brass knuckles than it is a watch.
It's the equivalent of looking at a picture of a person and then asking AI to produce a picture of a person, and it's got like 14 fingers hanging out of one hand. That's what the Invicta looks like. So we've painted a very colourful picture for you before you check the show notes or have a look at our Instagram. But that's the wrist checks done. We've told you to look in the show notes to find out all about the stuff we're going to chat about. And we're just going to start at, well, ground floor, I suppose you could call it, and find out how you got into this wonderful hobby, because you were at Dubai Watch Week, you were over in Geneva, you've been doing stuff with Moser, just at the Formula One. We saw Ed appearing on television with his kids for the Formula One at the qualifying. You were there, you mentioned Mr. Wonderful. So tell us, how did it all start for you? Because this is pretty high level stuff. Where was the ground floor entry point?
Ground floor entry point was a Casio, like most people. I come from a family that's very, very, very blue collar, so watches weren't a part of it. The only watch I had was literally a Casio, like everybody got, probably cost $10. This is the 80s, so it was, it was cool. I didn't really get into higher horology until I would say I was in my late 20s. I got my first, what I would call grown-up watch. It was a Burberry quartz watch. It was something I got in an outlet for like $300. I was transitioning in careers, so I was going into finance, so I needed something on the wrist that looked good. But luckily, I had a lot of friends that were already into horology. Mainly started with Rolex, but they had Panerai, they had JLC, they had a lot of stuff. And I realized I wasn't in the club and I desperately wanted to be in the club. So my first big pickup after that was a Rolex Yachtmaster two-tone, which I actually have. So I can pop that on the video right there. So this was my first big pickup. This was in 2016 in San Francisco with my wife. We got that watch literally with no money down. Actually, I think we put $1,000 down and it was 0% interest financing at the time. So I said, sure, I'll walk out of a store with a Rolex while giving you basically nothing. And that stayed on my wrist for about 3-4 years without anything else. And then it went insane from there. It got crazy. Probably 2019 is when I lost my mind.
Yeah, 2016 was just before I started getting into watches, before I bought my first Rolex, and I think it was change days. At that point, you could walk in and you could pick up an Explorer 2, you could pick up an LNGMT. I waited, I think it was 3 months to get my Batman at the beginning of 2017, and then your collecting went crazy, the world went crazy, the whole collector experience changed for the likes of Patek, for the likes of the high-end Omega stuff, and definitely for Rolex. It's a tale as old as time, literally, no pun intended. But that seems to be not that long in the past to where you are just now. So was this quite a juggernaut, I suppose? It was like the turbo spooling up and then the lag disappears and you're catapulted forward?
Funny you said the turbo spilling up. So my addiction before this was cars. So I was a car collector, car driver, not a race car driver, even though I thought I was on public roads. But I was scaling down on cars because I was moving to Philadelphia. I lived in Atlantic City, South Jersey. I was in Ventnor Beach Town, but beautiful roads in Jersey. You had Parkway, Expressway. So cars were my passion.
What did you have then? Give us a bit of an insight because our listeners love cars.
So I had a lot of cars. I had a Maserati Grand Sport. I had a Maserati Ghibli. I had a BMW i8. Briefly had a Lamborghini Huracan. I had multiple Range Rovers, multiple Mercedes, things like that. But my first crazy car was the 2006 Maserati Grand Sport V8 naturally aspirated. It was the one that Richard Hammond did the review on. I had it in this crazy blue. It was one of the first paddle shifters. The gearbox was shit, but I loved it. It made a noise that was insane. It was a Ferrari V8. So that was a beast. And from that point, Maserati I really loved. I know a lot of people crap all over it, but my Ghibli never gave me a problem ever. It was a beautiful car. It made an amazing noise. That was a turbo V6, but loved cars. But I live in Philadelphia. You can't drive them anywhere. There's nowhere to go. You could maybe go 20 miles an hour if you're lucky. So I scaled down and then I needed something to replace it. Watches are also cooler because, you can't take your car into a bar. You can't take your car in an airplane. You can't take your car on a podcast right now. And your watch goes with you everywhere. So it's easier from a human connection place. It's much easier to bond over watches. And the price point at the beginning can be a lot easier to get into than certain cars, but then it can get stratospheric. And I was lucky that I got a couple of nice deals before things lost their mind in 2019, before COVID. I started getting into Vacheron and Longa ALS, and then everything shut down. And obviously, like I said, I live a block away from Godberg. So when they first opened, human beings weren't going out. And I was like, I'm going out. I would just walk into the store. And this is when they were, distancing, mask. You couldn't, more than 4 people couldn't be in. I just kept coming every day. And they were like, this maniac is just going to keep coming. And they had no foot traffic. So they started offering me things that I probably shouldn't have been offered at the very beginning. And like I said, I sold a bunch of cars. I was ready to buy some stuff. And the first watch I bought was a Patek Philippe perpetual calendar from them. So I walked in off the seat. It was a 5327G. And it was white gold, 38.5. And I think they thought I was full of shit when I was like, is the one in the sales case for sale? And the lady literally goes, why? I go, I'd like to maybe buy it. And she said, her name's Natalie. I hope she listens to this. This is true. So she came back, she opened it up. She's like, what do you think? I was like, all right, I'll do it. She's like, you'll do what? I was like, I'll buy the watch. She was like, I'm confused. So, one thing led to another, tiny bit of back and forth. And I bought it. And then I was off and running, man. And that was, I'm going to say that was still 2020. Like this is December 2020, maybe November 2020. And then my next pickup from them was my first Moser. It is right here. I'll show this as well. It is a 1 of 20 red dial, blue hand, flying tourbillon, white gold. And this watch, Edward hates because he said it was ugly. Who would ever buy a red dial watch? And his father, who used to run AP, said, we have to do it. It's a beautiful color. And I bought it. And when Edward saw it, he was like, oh, human beings do buy this. But, it's got a little personal thing. So I love to show Edward it in his face every time I wear it.
Ed is a different kettle of fish. He's very aligned with the type of humour Scottish people have. And I remember his videos, and I talk about them all the time and probably bore the listeners to tears talking about them, but him pretending to be the next generation passing the watch down, and he's like down at the beach, surfing and partying and dancing and stuff. For the guy that's running Moser to do all that stuff, even through to the latest advert video, where the marketing guy walks in to say, oh, we've got this new spiel, and the watch starts talking. And the whole thing at the end is, let the watches do the talking. Absolutely fantastic marketing, and the stuff they do is just incredible. So again, hats off to them. Now, you're talking about cars. You mentioned some very specific things there. You talked about the engines, which means you know what you're talking about. When it comes to watches, were you first of all interested in the mechanisms, or were you interested in the look? Because for me, it was a mixture of the two when I first got into things.
So it's the same exact thing. So it was a mixture of the two. Like anybody, I would say looks at the beginning were definitely a bigger part. So I was more dial. I'm still a dial guy, right? Like if there's one thing with a watch that grabs me, generally it's the dial. But then I started getting into movements. I started getting into mechanics. I started looking at measurements, the lugs. I was amazed that a watch could be technically the same size and one looked like an optical illusion. One looked double the size of the other. And I didn't understand it. So I didn't understand bezels can play a huge part. The lugs, the cut, whether it's on a bracelet, whether it's on a strap, how it wears on the wrist. And like everyone, I bought some internet watches on impulse, and then I got it, and I'm like, oh, shit, this is not what I thought it was going to be. Way too big, way too small. I could shout out a couple of brands. Let's call them out. Grand Seiko, your GMTs or hockey pucks, way too big. And, I was like, 44, I got a big wrist, almost 18 centimeters. So I'm like, I can pull this off. It was literally like wearing a hockey puck on your wrist, 2 centimeters thick. And yet I have another watch that's a 46 that wears half that size. So that kind of blew my mind. And then I obviously started getting the movements, complications. I, for whatever reason, love the tourbillon. I know people say it's the most useless thing. I find it to be beautiful. Also, I find, what Louis Breguet did with that. I'm a history geek too. So, obviously started in pocket watches, but made its way to wristwatches. And I don't know, something about that talked to me. And I got into both. So now I don't really have a specific thing that I buy. I kind of buy the watch as a whole. So it really needs to look great. And if it has some kind of a historical or a unique perspective to it from a timepiece, it's like a timekeeping perspective, that matters to me a lot too. So I do both. But it started with both. I really did want to understand complications and movements, hence me buying a tourbillon right after I could pronounce the word tourbillon.
Well, let's get into your mind a little bit more about the collecting journey. And you've told us what you like. You mentioned tourbillons, which I have one myself, and I love it. It's completely unnecessary, but a wristwatch is completely unnecessary. So it's the same argument both ways. What is it you don't like? What kind of complications, what kind of look, what colours is it that you kind of shy away from, or perhaps they've just never taken your fancy?
So that's a really good question. So there's a lot of things that I kind of look away from. I talked about owning a perpetual calendar, but now I'm not as big on perpetual calendars just because they don't seem to be as functionally easy to use as others. You got to keep them completely set and wound all the time. So I'm not as big on, perpetual and annual calendars, but really I just look for a watch to grab me, and I can't really explain it. It's one of those things you can't understand until you see it. So I like different models from different brands, but overall, I go for things that are a little bit more durable. I like my sports watches because I actually use them. I pride myself on beating the shit out of some watches. I take them to the jungle. I've taken them literally up mountains. I've taken them to the Arctic. I've jumped off yachts with them. I'm sure you've seen that. So I like to do crazy stuff. So it needs to be generally durable. I look for waterproof for the most part. I need at least 100 meters most of the time. But if a watch grabs me, I'll break every rule I just said if I like it. So it's strange. I can't really put my finger on it. I know it when I know it, and then that's kind of how it goes.
Okay, as an add-on to that question, let me run through in your mind a watch that on paper, maybe in a tech spec or someone explaining it to you and describing it, you thought, not for me. But then when you saw it, you flipped and you decided that is for me. Anything come to mind there?
Well, without stating the obvious, Moser, but like something like the Freak, Yuli Sardon. So like if you hear about the Freak, somebody describes it to you, you're like, wait a minute. So the dial and the movement are the dial, and it's just a 1 hour kind of tourbillon, but it's not. And it looks like 4 circles going around. I don't get it. But then you actually see it and you're like, oh yeah, I get it immediately. Like, this is amazing. This is something different that grabs you. That said, even some of the different Freaks, they're clearly not for me. But that's an example of something, if you were described or saw on paper, just doesn't do it justice until you actually see it. So that would be a specific model of a watch, but it could be anything. It's tough to describe the brilliance of a dial on a picture or diagram, even a picture. So many times I'll see a watch on an ad or in a magazine or mainly on my phone screen, and I'm like, oh, that's great. And then you see it in person, you're let down, or the exact opposite. Those are the great surprises. When you actually get it on your wrist and you really like it, that's something that's great. And a lot of different metals don't photograph as well. Tantalum being one of the metals. So like I always encourage people, get it on your wrist. Go see it. Don't just look at it. Even if you see HD video, that's great. That might not match with your skin tone. That might not match with your body hair. Some people's watches go into the forest that is their wrist and it goes away. It just depends on every different person. So like I can't exactly explain it, but I say you have to see it in person. That's where I would.
Well, I'm going to rewind the clock a little bit and basically explain how we came to meet. And this goes way, way back to the end of last year when Andrew Morgan was chatting to me about lots of things. Behind the scenes, I knew what was kind of going on, as did a lot of journalists and media people in the watch sphere. We knew what was going on for quite some time, but it wasn't common knowledge. And then he said to me, are you coming across to Dubai? I said, yes, of course. We were there the last time. We wouldn't miss it for the world. And he says, all right, okay, well, there's a couple of people I want to introduce you to. We came across and we actually met you and Rob at, I think it was one of the horology forum talks, and he was sitting just a couple of seats back from me. I believe Barbara Plumbo was actually comparing that one because there was a lot of back and forward with a younger, so he called himself, collector in the audience. They thought he was young at 35, and then somebody else stood up that was 17. But you were behind, so was Andrew, so was Rob, and he was wearing his Mad One Red, and we caught up there. And then it was actually your anniversary that you and your wife were celebrating, and you invited me, Simona, Andrew was there obviously with his good lady, Rob, we had Matthew from UN, we had Edward from Moser, and it was the first time I'd been on a yacht, never done that in my life before, and it was fantastic. I got some of the best pictures, I got some of the best video, I stayed completely dry, while everybody else apart from Ed, he stayed with me on dry land, well, on a dry boat. Everyone else was playing around in the water, and it was just a fantastic night. The sights, the sounds, the smell, the sunlight, everything was just absolutely perfect. But that's where I got to find out more about you, got to find out more about Matthew at UN and what they were doing. And it was one of the highlights. Dubai is a highlight, but that was one of the highlights of the highlights. And that's how we first got introduced to each other. But do you want to explain a little bit more about the Andrew story? Because we've had him on. He's told us his version of events, how things came to be, leaving Watchfinder, sort of carving his own way in the watch media cycles. But you're kind of involved a little bit as well.
Yes, I'm involved a little bit, like you said, behind the scenes, like kind of the way I like to keep it, but not completely. So Andrew and I are business partners in AMW. I am the chief growth officer for AMW. I'll keep exactly the whole time when he was leaving a certain other company away, but I would say, I've been there through a lot of AMW, and it was great because being with Andrew is getting a glimpse into where the bridges of collectors meet the bridges of fans, meet the actual watch companies themselves. So you get to really see three things come together were great. And that time in Dubai, we were there as a coming out party in a sense for AMW. It was really great, and we were meeting different brands. And I was killing two birds with one stone because it was my 10th wedding anniversary. My wife had also never been on a yacht, and she really, really wanted to do it. And at the time, I only had 7 people coming because I'm a psychopath. And Andrew was like, can I invite some other people? I was like, yeah, dude, you can invite anybody you want. So he was like, oh, I'm gonna bring Ricky, and he's gonna bring his lovely fiance. So I was like, all right, well, that's cool. And at the time, I had just met you, so we didn't really talk that much. You seem like a nice guy. I knew vaguely about Scottish Watch Podcast, but I was like, all right, dude, cool. Just meet at the dock. And then we got there, and the first thing was go get beer. So I left everybody, like half the people knew each other, half didn't. So I took off to go get beer and alcohol at the, there's very limited places in Dubai you can buy it. So you have to go to the official thing. You have to bring your passport, all this stuff. And then I came back and you were there. Your lovely was there. My wife was there. Charlotte, Andrew, Edward, Matthew, and Rob. That was it. And then we just went. And I think I put Kid Rock on for the first song. And then we just started popping bottles and jumping off into the Persian Gulf. It got wild fast. And that was great. But like, those are one of those watch things that I was saying this earlier. Watches make strange bedfellows. It brings people together in ways that you just don't think. And obviously, if you're going to bond, there's no place like a vacation and a special event. And then since then, I've seen you in London. I've seen you in Geneva. We were very jet setty, but we've never seen each other in Scotland or the United States, where we both live, which is very strange.
Yet.
Yeah. I have a feeling I'll be in Scotland before you're in the United States. I like to get an excuse to go somewhere new.
Well, you come across here and we'll make it worth your while, because there are many sights to see and there are a lot of things that the tourists think they want to go and look at. We will show you the true Scotland. But yeah, I completely forgot about British Watchmakers Day. That was an inaugural event put on by the Alliance of British Watch and Clockmakers. Recently, Bremont joined, so we've pretty much got everybody sewn up. That was probably one of the big events, big highlights of this year so far. It was massively bigger than my expectations beforehand. I had no idea just how good it was going to be. What was it like for you? Because I take it you've obviously been to a lot of Goldberg events, you've been to Moser events, you've probably been to wind-ups and things like that in the States and across the world. What was Watchmakers Day like for you?
So it blew me away. I got to be honest with you. Not that I'm knocking British watchmakers, but I didn't have high expectations. I really didn't. Not to talk about Christopher Ward and obviously Studio Underdog and some others like that. But for the most part, I was, blown away by how many different brands, the quality of some of the watches. Obviously, Roger Smith, just amazing. There were some other heavy hitters there. But the turnout was insane. It was packed. It was in a big room, but it felt like you were in somebody's basement, crowded around. Crazy enthusiasm. And again, I was there with Andrew. And whenever you go to a watch event with Andrew, it's a little rock starry, right? Like people are coming up, it gets a little nuts. But, it's very cool. I like to be able to travel with friends. And, like I said, Andrew and I are business partners, but we were friends first, like dear friends. And we bonded over watches. And it was an excuse to go see him, go to hang out with Charlotte and my wife, Kate, and go see Kent in Southern England. We went to the Dover Cliffs. We did all the sightseeing stuff. But then, of course, there you are. There Dave is, flying the Scottish watch flag. We were texting each other, I think, the day before. You were on the road at 4 a.m, WhatsApping me pictures of a black road. And I was like, all right, dude, I'm going to see you tomorrow. And I was snuggled up in bed, and Kent, you were driving down the highway, man. So it seemed like your commute was harder than mine.
I will put my hands up and say I was not driving. Simona was doing the driving because she likes to do that kind of thing. So she did the commute, and I remember getting to the hotel, and that's where we found out the hotel didn't have any parking. Not good. But we got round it because, ingenuity plays its part, and that was a phenomenal event from start to finish, and I'm really glad that it's coming back next year. And they've not decided to blow it open and do it over 2 days, because it never really works. You lose a little bit of that panache because people, we'll just turn up the next day. We'll catch it next time. If you make it concise, compact, and you actually turn the saturation up and pack so much into that small amount of time, it just works better. It makes it more of a spectacle, more of an actual event. And I think next year will be even bigger than this year. But back to you, back to watches and collecting. You gave us a little bit of a hint on where things began, the first couple of watches. How did the collecting journey develop from there?
Like anything, I like to bring people into things, right? Like, as you can tell, I'm a people guy. I like to bring people in. So I had friends that were clients of mine that were into watches that were great. But moving to Philly, I moved to Philly 2 days before COVID hit. So I came to Philadelphia March 13th, and then March 15th, lockdown, right? So I'm stuck in my apartment. What did I do? started trolling the internet like anybody else, YouTube videos, started watching Andrew, started watching Tim Masso, started watching some others, but really just, I had nothing to do but play with a couple of watches that I had, listen to that and go crazy like everybody else. But as soon as the stores opened, I went over there and I started meeting people in Philadelphia in the watch scene. And that also, you start pitching and collecting with each other. And I was lucky I met Rob Huberty at Godberg. I met my good friend Shigor at Godberg. And then my collection got pretty good. I started buying some big pieces and I did a collector conversation with Tim Masso. And because of that, I started meeting other collectors from the collector conversations. And I realized nobody was doing any events with these guys. Like there was no connection, there was no group. So I took it upon myself. I was like, all right, we're going to start going to some dinners. We're going to start doing some crazy watch stuff. And then of course we went to events on the watch calendar, but I started throwing crazy watch parties behind the scene. And then when you get 6 guys together and, D Batoons and FB Jorns and Pateks are flying everywhere, it's intoxicating like anything else. You want the cool new watch, you want to show off, you want to get what's cool. So that kind of put it on steroids. And then like anything, buying watches begets buying more watches. So I went deeper down the rabbit hole. Brands I started getting into, obviously Rolex, tons and tons of different Rolex, but I went through Journe for a brief time and then I got out and then I went heavier into Vacheron and then I pulled back on that. Now I guess my current Moser's been there since I started. I like UN, but really Cartier is catching my eye a lot. I'm going down the Cartier rabbit hole. Again, there's really no rhyme or reason other than what I'm digesting at that time, who I'm with, and then what crazy internet tangent I go on looking at videos. Tim Masso and Andrew, both being friends, is dangerous because they can empty a bank account quicker than a Coke dealer. So like it goes quick. It's insane. And they both shout out to me like watches to buy. And they're never cheap for whatever reason. Once in a while, you get a Belcanto, thank you. But for the most part, it's, Moser was on a Monday mailbag and he shouted out some Cartier model that I never heard of. He's like, Tim Mancuso, if you're watching, you should buy this watch. So I Google it and it's like a $250,000 watch. And I'm like, all right, guys, take that shit down a level. Maybe I set the bar too high. But it's fun, man. I have fun with it. It's good. And, I've met a lot of great guys. We're talking because of it. And it's going to continue. Like now it's somehow become part of a business and too many good friends to not do it. But right now, I would say Cartier is my new rabbit hole. I got this very cool Calibre de Cartier. It's a 2012 solid rose gold. It is a monster. It weighs, I think, 360 grams. So it's a beautiful, beautiful piece. 2012, first in-house Cartier movement on it. Another recommendation from Tim Masso. But it's one of those watches that if you go online, you can pick it up half the price that it went on for sale, which is insane. I think there's 3 of them for sale in the world. So there's very cool niches and little areas you can go. But I tend to stick with watches that have wrist presence. And obviously now I just want them to be durable. That one's not as durable, but for a dress watch, it's pretty damn good.
Yeah. When you've got a bit of heft, you've got a bit of protection as well because it can absorb some of the knocks that are thrown at it. You mentioned they're getting into things and then pulling back or getting out. You mentioned Journe, you mentioned pulling back in Vacheron. What makes you pull back from something?
So what makes me pull back from it? Obviously, I'm not going to lie. There are market conditions with watches, right? Prices of watches go up, prices of watches go down. Sometimes things go stratospheric like Journe did. And it becomes economically strange to keep a watch that you're not in love with. But I went down the Journe rabbit hole probably because everybody said, this is it. And I'm not going to not FB Journe. He's maybe the greatest living watchmaker, but those watches just didn't speak to me the way others did. And I realized I bought some pieces based on a lot of hype and not as much of a connection with me. Not to say they feel old man-y, but some of them felt old man-y. So, I parted with those and I decided to find more pieces that spoke to me. And, as corny as it sounds, a lot of that's Rolex. There's a reason Rolex is the king. They wear the crown because they're absolutely amazing. And without them, the watch market itself fails. So I've gone down the Rolex rabbit hole pretty hard, and I'm lucky to get some really cool special pieces. But, what changes is you change. The watches are pretty much the same thing. I'm not going to say I grow tired of things quickly, but I don't keep them forever, right? I sometimes like something, and then like anything, like a car. After a while, it doesn't have that same sound to you, and that's when you know it's time to move on.
Makes sense. Recently, I have been offloading things. I'm getting rid of my Batman and my Daytona. Not that I don't like them, but new things have come in that have taken precedence, I suppose you could say. I got the UN a couple of months ago, and I obviously picked up the Moser at the end of last year. But it's not all big brands. There's a lot of things that come in for us to review. Most recently, I can name, there was a Spinnaker that came in that's around about $500. Before that, there was a Jack Mason, the GMT Espresso, which was about $800. Yeah, and it's fantastic. So there's always something catching my eye, and I'm in a very privileged position where a watch will come in and we get to test it for a few months and then we send it back. So that scratches the itch of needing to constantly replenish and fill the watch box up. But I should probably ask just now, is there anything that you've got your eye on, or is there anything that you're waiting to arrive?
Other watches I'm waiting for, like everybody else, Rolex. I do get some cool Rolexes, but I'm waiting on the Celebration dial. I really, really want that, which the bubbles. I know it's ridiculous. It's ostentatious. I say that watch should be on a yacht, getting champagne spilled on it. That's like kind of perfect. Other watches that I really want, there's a new green dial Vacheron that just came out that Watches and Wonders. Really, really like that. Time and date only. That's pretty much it. It's got a chronograph. There's one. I believe there's a ladies model and another one, but I just want the time and date only. That's what I'm really looking at. And then other than that, I haven't gone down the vintage rabbit hole. And the reason for that is I'm scared of Frankensteins. I'm scared of watches that you don't know the authenticity. You just don't know the history. So I'm pretty much a new watch guy. I will buy used watches, but I kind of cut it off at maybe the year 2000. I don't really go before that because I don't trust it as much. So another one that I really want, I would love to get a Meteorite Daytona. I don't have a Meteorite. I have this Meteorite, but a Meteorite Daytona would be very cool. So things like that. But right now I'm at a spot where I have a lot of watches, and the tough spot is I believe if it doesn't get wrist time, it's got to go, right? Like I'm a wrist time, no safe queens, not zero. You don't wear your watch, it should go. I don't believe in letting it sit. Of course, there's sentimental and there's things like that, but for the most part, if it doesn't get wrist time, I go. So I don't keep every watch forever. There's certain watches that I'm never going to get rid of. That first Rolex, there's other watches that I can't imagine I'd get rid of, but for the most part, if I don't wear it, it goes. So if I get something new, something's got to go out to pasture. And that's usually the harder part than getting something new for me at this point.
And how does this compare to your previous life with cars? Is it quite a similar thing?
It is. Obviously, I have a lot more watches than I ever had cars, but yeah, it really is. So like I said, sometimes you get a car and it's kind of sad the day that exciting new car is just a car, right? Like you just get into it, you're at the supermarket, you're at the drugstore, you're at wherever, and it kind of loses the luster. Sometimes you'll get it, you'll hit a turn, you'll hear a sound, but for the most part, that might be, your subconscious telling you it's time for it to go. And unfortunately, everybody generally hits that spot at some point. Nobody really has their first car. Nobody really owns their second car. They may go out and rebuy it, but you don't really own the first one. And I don't think anybody really regrets that. That's just part of life. And I think watches should be the same way. Now, full stop. I have friends that own 80, 90 watches that are complete psychopaths, and I love that. That's great for them, but you can't wear 90 watches, and that's fine with some people, but I'm not the put it in the safe. Now, I'm a maniac that'll wear 2 watches in the same day. Like I will wear a watch all day, and then I'll switch it, and I'll wear a different one at night. So I can get wrist time for 2 watches in one day. That's not hard for me. But, for other people, everybody teach their own, but for me, it's got to be worn. And if I haven't worn a watch in 2-3 months and it's not a special occasion dress watch or a tuxedo watch, then that might be time for that watch to hit Chrono 24 or wherever it's going to be sent off to pasture.
What is the story with Rob? How did you meet up with him? You mentioned it was something to do with Goldberg, and he seems to be your watch partner when you're across the world at different places.
Yeah, so Rob and I, we just had our 1-year anniversary, which is very sweet. So we, Mother's Day last year, let me tell you this romantic story. It's a good one. So we didn't actually meet on Mother's Day. We met February of last year at Goldberg in the store in Philadelphia. So I'm in the store, I'm in sweatpants looking like a homeless person. I'm in sweatpants, a sweatshirt, I'm being loud, I'm walking around, and I'm wearing, I think I actually had the Asteroid on, this watch. So I'm in there, and one of the sales ladies, Monica, taps me on the shoulder, and she goes, "Hey, somebody's here. They'd like to talk to you." I go, "Sure." So I thought it was an employee or a brand or something like that. There's a guy sitting there with the long hair looking cool, and he goes, "I recognize your voice." And then he didn't say anything else. And I go, "Well, that's the creepiest thing anybody's ever said to me." And he goes, "No, man, from your video with Tim Masso." And I'm like, "Oh, shit, somebody watched it." So we got to talking, and he had just filmed the Collector Conversation, which had not been released yet. That subsequently has gone on to be the second most viewed Collector Conversation in their history. Rob, for people that don't know, is former Navy SEAL, wore Rolexes in combat, and they released it on Memorial Day. Actual American hero. So really cool guy, but he's a psychopath, like me. Like he's nuts. He collects crazy, he goes crazy. So I told him, I was like, well, I like to get weird. He was like, oh, I like to get weird. So it was like a challenge. And then I said, okay, when I get a watch thing, I'll hit you up. I was like, just make sure you actually show up. He said, all right, I'll show up. So like a month or so went by. We had texted, we had done a couple of like messages, hung out at a bar, I believe once. And then I texted him. I said, hey man, I got a thing tonight. You got to come. He goes, bro, it's Mother's Day and I have 4 children. I go, yeah, that's fine, but you got to come. And he goes, what are you talking about? I go, well, I got a super stretch prom limo. You see a theme here, Ricky, that seats like 30. You can't even make turns on side streets. It's so fucking bad. So I said, he goes, who's going? And I go, don't worry about that. I go, well, here's who's going. I got this guy, Shagor, who's another good friend who Rob never met. And I also never hung out with. I said, the manager of Godberg, a girl named Ryan. I said, my wife, Kate, one of her coworkers who's named Brianna. I go, my boy, Margarito, who's a bartender, and Edward Malon. And he goes, Edward Malon, as in the owner of Moser watches. I go, the same. And he goes, well, what's he doing? I go, well, he went to Wharton. He's in town. Don't ask questions. I go, we're going to this really, really cool restaurant in Atlantic City called Chef Ola's. One of those places you need a reservation a year in advance to get into. And even then, you'll get stuck in the corner. So I was like, no, we got a 12 top. It's going to be great. We got this prom limo. We're going. So I think he told his wife, he was like, either this guy is so full of shit or this is like an opportunity I can't afford to miss. So he came down on Mother's Day. And on the limo down, we drank on the limo ride down. Then we went to dinner. Then we hit a casino. We ended up getting back at 4 a.m. And then he stumbled, the 8 blocks to his house. And that started the craziness. And then we started working out together. And we're both maniacs, so we wear our watches. And then the bet was like, where can you wear your watches crazier? So we rock with our watches. We put weighted vests on in my building and go up and down the stairs wearing Daytonas. And we'll send videos to Andrew, who freaks out because he's like, you're going to ruin those fucking watches. Stop it. Stop doing this. He's like, haven't you guys heard of Casio? And we're like, no, that, man. Like, if you're going to do it, wear your Daytona like it's intended. So, we started doing that. And then I kind of pushed him with watches. He pushed me a little bit. And it was very cool that him and I have gone to Watches and Wonders. And we went to Dubai Watch Week. We've gone to New York to Moser events. We flew to Boston to go watch shopping. So we've done a lot of really cool watch stuff in a year's time. But that's the kind of people that I like and I gravitate to. I like people that are all about it and want to go, 100 miles an hour at what they're doing. And meanwhile, Rob is a COO of a major tech company that's literally preventing gun violence and Zero Eyes, which you know about. So I'm stealing him away from not only a wife and 4 children, but a very big job. But it's cool because these guys, you put the bat signal in the air and then they return the call. They show up. So it's been really cool. But Shagor, Rob, these are good friends. Obviously Andrew, and that's expanding. Now I'm becoming friends with people from some of the brands like, Matthew and Edward. Edward's definitely a friend. Claudio, the Moser guy. So it's very cool. But I'm pushing it to the limit with as far as like how many watch events I can get to in a short amount of time. I'm overdoing it. Like since I've seen you, I think I've been to 4 different countries and like 4 different states doing watch things. So it's getting nuts. Like I think I may have to like decompress just a tiny bit.
Well, the reason this episode is going out now, and the reason the episode is recorded as we're recording it just now, is because you were on your travels yet again. We were going to do this a few weeks back and you said, we can do it now, or you can wait, because I'm going to the F1. And I'm going to perhaps bump into Ed. I'm perhaps going to bump into this person and that person. There might be some stories. So are there any stories?
Yeah, there's some stories. So it was F1 with Moser. And as you know, they sponsor Alpine. So it wasn't just regular F1. It was paddock passes. It was down in the garage during the race where you listen to the headsets. It was all access. And then it was Miami. So it's Celebrity Central. And I'm not like a star fucker. Like that doesn't really excite me. But it is a little cool when like Kevin O'Leary is at the Moser party and then there's Zinedine Zidane sitting next to me. And so it's Zinedine Zidane and Kevin O'Leary and they're talking. And I literally went up to them and every 2 seconds, somebody was taking a picture with me. So I was like, I told my wife, I was like, I got this. So I handed them the phone and they were like, they assumed the position. I was like, no. Can you two take a picture of me and her? So they started laughing. I said, when is the last time somebody asked you to take a picture? And they weren't in it, but they were cool, dude. They were great guys. They're obviously big Moser fans, but also Formula One. So there was parties that night. I hung out with a lot of the people that I already knew. And the crazy part is these watch events aren't huge social circles. It's kind of the same people that go to a lot of these. So you end up seeing friends. You see people you know. So it was spectacular. I saw Shane. I saw Ron and his lovely wife Rachel. These are big Moser collectors. But then you see other people in the watch thing. Like all the Formula One teams are sponsored by watches, from Richard Mille to Gerard Perregaux and so on and so on. So you see the same kind of people around. It was really cool. That was my first F1 race. It was incredible. Like hearing the noise and the feeling in your chest just can't be described. And it was Lando won for the first time ever. So he maybe should say thank you to me. I was good luck charm. It was really cool. In fact, Lando refused to take a picture with one of the guys about 30 minutes before race time that we were with. Shane asked to take a picture and he was in the zone. Like, it's not Lando's fault. And Shane hovered around him until Lando's bodyguard escorted Shane away. So we say that was the motivation. He was getting pissed off because Shane wouldn't walk away. And you could see Lando wasn't making eye contact with him. And I'm like, dude, I think you should go. And then we got shoot off. And then Lando won the race. It was very, very cool. Little inside thing there.
And did you spot any? I know you said you're not a star celebrity watch spotter type person, but did you spot any celebs and did you spot any cool watches on wrist?
As far as celebrities, like I said, Zinedine Zidane, Kevin O'Leary, I saw all of the drivers. I got to, see basically Max. I got to see Lando. I got to see Ocon. I got to see all the drivers, which is really cool. Travis Kelce was there. I didn't go over. He had a crowd around him with the whole Taylor Swift thing. She wasn't there, but there were a lot of celebrities, bunch of Miami Dolphins, things like that. I didn't get the Invicta on enough wrists there. Kind of was taken in by the whole thing. I got it on a couple of wrists, but it was just cool to be there. And then, the atmosphere was great. I got to walk around Dolphin Stadium, or I guess it's called Crypto Arena or whatever the hell it's called now. But it was just cool to see all the, the people's 250,000 was mobbed. It was just crazy, crazy cool event. It was really, really, really cool. Sold out. And I can see why. It was just, and it's Miami, man. Going to Miami in early May, that never sucks. Miami's a great town to go hang out in. If you can't do 72 hours in Miami, something's wrong with you. It's not hard to have fun.
And as we come to the end of this episode, and there are so many more stories to tell, I know that you're brimming with things that you could be talking about right now, but we only have an hour or just under, so we're going to have to kind of wrap things up. Anything else you want to quickly chat about?
I mean, no, there's not really specifically anything I want to chat about as far as myself. It's just more like, when are we going to see each other again? What's the next big event? I got to get to Scotland. I'd chat about that off camera, but I really do want to see Scotland and go hang out. But, I just want to say that to anybody out there that is into the collecting, get out to events, go see people. There's nothing wrong with doing YouTube. There's nothing wrong with watching podcasts. These are great, but use these as inspiration to actually go out. And most of these events are free. I was just at Madison Avenue Watch Week. You just have to register online for half these things. Those are free. They hand you a glass of champagne when you walk in, whether you're a guy off the street or whether you spent $5 million on the watches. It's open to anybody. So I just tell people to get out there. Yeah, it's hard to jump on a plane, but nobody regrets on their deathbed not going on vacation. It's usually, going on vacation. They always regret not going. So I don't think it's ever a bad thing, especially if you can track one or two friends into going with you. It's awesome. So I would say I just want people to get out there and do more stuff. There goes the bel canto dinging in the background. So that's literally a timer. But just get out there and do it. And I think it's great that anybody can sign up for any of these events and just show up. It's really cool.
Well, you're absolutely correct. And I know from the experience I had before the podcast, just as an enthusiast, my local boutiques, multis and mono brands would always be having dinners and events. And I would go in and just look at watch. I wasn't even purchasing. And I would be given the opportunity and the offer of, we've got a Brega evening coming up, we've got a Zenith event coming up. And you would just go along. And you would learn things, you'd be able to handle watches that perhaps the store normally wouldn't have. That led on to bigger things. Obviously, my origin story was going to Baselworld back in 2017, having bought my first watch just 3 months prior to that. But you can go to Geneva Watch Days. That's free of charge. You can go across to Watches and Wonders in the Public Days. It might cost you 70 to 90 euros. But it's a great thing. It's a great thing to do. And as we've said before, don't listen to the people that take the piss out of things and say it's not good. We're telling you it is, and everything is what you make of it. So yeah, 100% get to events, get to meetups, sign up for Red Bar, sign up for your local watch society or local watch club, because that's where you'll meet like-minded folks that will understand what you're going through every time you see a new watch and you say, that's next for the wrist.
Yeah, and trick slash encourage people to get into the hobby, right? You don't need to have the watch on your wrist to go. Bring your friend, bring your brother, bring somebody with you. Who knows? It's like I said, some of the best friendships I have are made over watches. And some of the friends that I already had that weren't into watches, show it to them. Show them why you like it. They don't like it, no big deal, but bring somebody out, give them a new perspective. It never hurts. And like I said, so many of these things are so accessible. Show up, get your picture taken, try on the new models, feel cool, and be Pretty Woman for the day, right? Pretend you're Julia Roberts and go try on things that you have no intention of buying. It's fun. It's a good time.
That is the best closeout to a show in recent history that I can remember. So thank you very much for that one, and thank you for listening to the show. It's been an adventure. Let's call it an adventure, because behind the scenes there's been a few technical hitches, a few gremlins that have crept in as we've been doing this recording, but we got there. Well, Tim is a consummate professional. He knows what he's doing. He puts his nose against the grind wheel, and we got there in the end. But so much cool stuff, so many cool watches shown. There was a couple that you were going to talk about, maybe a gifted Casio from our good friend Andrew, but we can keep that for the next episode we record. And I'm going to tell people once again, check the show notes. All the pictures, the details, including the stunning Moser you've got on the wrist, and your new bel canto will appear in there. Have you got anywhere you'd like to divert people towards? I know you said to me that you don't really do the social media thing, so
I would plug AMW, right? Like watch Andrew Morgan Watches, sign up for the YouTube channel, check that out. Obviously reach out, Instagram, sign up for that, check it out. But me personally, no, I am a fully behind the scenes, no social media. But that doesn't mean that there aren't people out there that do it much better than I ever would, like yourself, like Andrew and things like that. And then that would be the best start that I would say. And from that point, just get the hell off your ass, go out there, man, go see some stuff. Go to Dubai, go to Switzerland, go have fun, or just go to your local watch event, your local AD, it doesn't matter. Just get into it.
That's it. Get the watches on the wrist. Best advice ever. And that is us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you guys again soon.